It is still.
Excellent. Right, it's really good to have Ben Gardner with me today, which is brilliant. Good to have him on board. And today, looking at the whole subject of leadership, and we'll just see where the conversation goes today. Obviously, it's a bit around the kind of book that I'm just publishing on called I See You, and just to really appreciate you actually coming on, Ben. And I know that you obviously did some work in inputting some stuff for me, endured an interview with me, so that was really good. But perhaps we could kind of kick off, and if you could just tell us a bit about yourself, what you're currently up to, and kind of where you're leading as a leader, as it were.
Thanks, Mark. And I didn't endure your interview. I enjoyed your interview. It's brilliant and it's a great book. And I encourage anyone to read it, buy it, send it to lots of people. Yeah, my name is Ben, and I'm married to Helen. She's a doctor in the NHS here in the UK. We've got 2 children. Beth, who's 5, started school during the pandemic here in the UK again. Got a son who's 2. He's called Samuel, and we're teaching him not to hit his sister with his breakfast bowl in the morning. So that's what I'm up to at the moment, teaching basic, human interaction with our children, which is good, and they keep us on our toes. And in terms of leadership, I lead a church, and it's a new church in Grange Park, Loughborough. So Loughborough's bang in the centre of the UK, miles away from the sea. Helen and I were called to be on the coast. We live miles away from anything that looks like the coast. And we planted this new church back in 2019. We were sent from 2 other churches to a brand new housing estate in the town of Loughborough. We were sent with a team, of which there was about 23 of us, I think, were sent, 10 of which were children, and they're very much part of the team, the sending team. And then within that, I've got a leadership team that we journeyed with before the launch of this new church community, and a team that I'm currently leading and growing and exploring what it means to be engaged in leadership, and for me also what it means to lead. For the first time, I've been under a number of leaders, but this is my first time going solo as a leader. So it's terrifying and exciting at the same time.
Yeah. Great. No safety net this time then.
Exactly, yeah.
That's brilliant. Okay, so just exploring the whole thing about leadership. Often when I talk to leaders, they have had people who influence them for different reasons. I just wondered, who would you say has influenced you most, and why that would be?
So again, I think with anyone, you've got a number of people that you could pick, especially people in family, friends, people that you connect with, other leaders. But my biggest hero is probably my dad. My dad is an Anglican vicar like me. I never thought I'd be an Anglican vicar. Didn't want to be an Anglican vicar, but now I am. But yeah, he both my mum and my dad lead in different ways. But my dad, in terms of church leadership, spiritual leadership, and he's been a massive inspiration to me in the way that he's led in different contexts with different size of teams. So him on his own with a lot of volunteers leading, to him leading quite a large church and growing that church with a large team that are employed and paid, and the complications that brings, but also the joys and the freedom that brings. So yeah, so he's been one of probably my biggest inspirations, but also one of my biggest supporters, and someone that I constantly go back to every week saying, Dad, what do you think of this? How do I lead in this scenario? What's going on here? And just his ability to lead, but also to give away leadership, which I think has been a big bonus of what my dad did. Some of the negatives is his ability to overwork, which he is totally aware of. And one of the things that I've learned is not to take on too much, and to rest well, and to enjoy that and celebrate that within my own life, but also in the lives of those that I lead. So yeah, big inspiration, things that he's done wrong that I can learn from, and things that he's really done well.
Brilliant. Yeah, great. Thanks very much for that. Yeah, I think I would concur. Not that your dad's my influence, but certainly my dad is. So thinking about leadership in general, just in the kind of context of where we are as a world, in terms of and what people are experiencing, why do you think leadership is such a critical issue at this time?
I think it's a massive issue. I mean, we've been, I think, as a nation, I think we've been looking for leadership, and sometimes I'm sure most of us can agree that it's been disappointing at times. We want someone to lead us out of this pandemic or lead us through the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I think we naturally look for leadership and guidance,
Yeah.
and sometimes that leadership can easily deflect off to others. Like we're guided by the science, for instance. They're leading us, but are they really leading us? And so I think I think it's just highlighted the importance of leadership in terms of someone has to lead.
Yeah.
And I think most people, I think the majority of people in our nation and across the world are looking for someone to follow, looking for someone to navigate the way ahead together and collaboratively. I think as a team, not just someone in isolation, but I think we naturally look for someone to lead, and we want someone to lead. So I think it's heightened our awareness of that need for leadership and good leadership.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's good. That's fair point. And it's interesting to say, leadership is obviously a function, but somebody needs to do it, and people need to be leaders worth following. Otherwise, and we've seen lots of that. We yearn for that kind of thing, don't we?
Yeah.
To have a leader with direction. In the book, I talk about, what's the leader's motivation in leading. I mean, it sounds like a strange thing because leaders come into leadership in different ways, and people have different motives for that. I just say, what would you say are the main motivations for you in terms of being a leader?
I think someone once told me that you know a leader by their wake, in terms of like the wake of a ship. So you see the frothiness behind the ship going, and what's being churned up, and is it positive, is it negative, are there bodies left behind, or are there people that are inspired and filled and equipped to do the thing that they're called to do? So I think for me, one of the biggest things of leadership is to identify, to equip, to release, and to sort of mentor, to encourage other leaders, to lift people up, to upskill people, to get people to believe in the gifts that they have within them, to excel, to grow. So for me, the motivation of leadership is to see others grow in their leadership, to a point where I think most people recognize this, and there's loads of books written on it, but who are we giving stuff away to, and how are we sort of doing ourselves out of a job? So if I'm without a job at the end of the year or my time here, then I think I've done my job. So I think what's in the wake, is it something that's positive, or is it something that's negative? And just always just realigning myself slightly to what I'm actually meant to be doing, which is equipping others, identifying other leaders, and seeing them grow, and new things kick off that I wouldn't be able to do myself.
No, that's really good. And I think there's that it's the outwards inwards type thing, isn't it? Are you outward focused? Are you others focused? Wanting to work for their highest good, serving them, that kind of thing, which is great. And I think I would say that in terms of the leadership that we need at this time, is that you get most influence by helping others reach where they want to be, and it's that kind of almost counterintuitive thing where, as you lift others up, they also lift you. You all get lifted at the same time, and everybody wins.
Yeah, and like you say in your book about love, do you love your team? Which again is challenging. It's a challenging question. Do I actually love my team? And I remember my science teacher, when we all failed in our mock exams, even though we should do a lot better. I remember him dragging the chair into the middle of the room and really having a go at us, saying, "Actually, you're better than this. You can do better. Why did you do this?" And then bringing us in one by one during the lunchtime break. And he'd gone from Mr. Grumpy, angry, to Mr. Compassionate, and sort of saying, "Look, you can do better, Ben. I believe in you." And he had a deep love for us as students, and I think that's a good example of leadership.
And it's one of those things that people can see, isn't it? It's not, you don't have to second guess so much when people are kind of, people make mistakes, don't they? But it's important to kind of own those mistakes and move on. You get currency, I guess, with people, and you can't take out what you haven't invested. So it's really good. Um, just talking around this, you kind of briefly touched on it there, but what would you say are the signs, if you like, that a leader does have the team's highest good in mind? What are some of the things, the evidences, if you like, characteristics that you would see?
I think it's recognizing, for me personally, it's recognizing when to innovate, when to turn up the pace, but also when to bring the pace down.
Yeah.
So I think it's being aware of what pace is required in order for the team to move as a team, rather than to for me to rush ahead and the team to be exhausted. So I think that's one, is knowing the times and seasons to go for it and when to pull back, and just be I guess in terms of a church context, being the pastor, being the shepherd. How do you make time to really sit down and listen to your team?
Right. Yeah.
And actually go, how's your family? How's your life outside of the role that you have within this team?
Yes.
And knowing when to do that, but also when to encourage them to step up. I think that's a massive challenge to any leader, really. I find that challenging all the time. And
yeah.
Also another trait of when to share things. Is this the right team to share it with at this time? And so having their well-being, having their care in mind, especially as an extrovert processor, is knowing when to process stuff with the team and when to pause for a bit and wait to share it, so you don't build anxiety within the team. So I think it's those traits of love and care, and knowing when to go, right, we need to huddle together for a bit. We need to go and have a fun day somewhere.
Yes.
Go to the local fire station and put out some fires and just put on helmets and just have a bit of fun. And so knowing when to do that.
No, that's good. Kind of knowing what's going on the inside of people, isn't it? I think it's an interesting one, because I think one of the things that we forget that in a crisis situation, the leadership actually needs to be more visible. That doesn't mean they need to necessarily micromanage, but at least they've got to be visible and asking questions beyond just the work that needs to be done. And kind of, I think there's probably nothing more helpful and encouraging than when a leader remembers the kind of, if they shared information with you about their family or something that's going on, and you come back and ask, how's that going? And, it just shows a different level of interaction, which builds a deeper level of trust,
And Mark, during the pandemic, right in the first phase of that, we decided to meet every week on a Monday evening as a team. And that wasn't to say, right, how are we going to innovate this? How are we going to move our services online, and how are we connecting? It was purely just to see how each other were. And actually, I think we grew more in that season. And actually, in many ways, we're more productive in terms of the fruits that we saw within the work and the roles that we had. Purely just by going, how are you doing? How are you doing? And in a church context, again, and as a Christian, we prayed for each other. And that was one thing that I really encourage, is that we share and we pray. And then we had about 5-10 minutes of work business stuff. And that's all we really needed. So we had 45 minutes of how are you, and 10-15 minutes of work business. And actually we saw things grow and develop and within the work, and grew as a team. So that's something that we're learning. How does that then, we don't just stop that because there isn't a pandemic.
No.
How do we continue that?
Some of those things kind of sort of laser-like focus on things, but it's carrying them on and realizing how much benefit you get from them. I think certainly with meetings generally, we spend so many people spend a lot of time in meetings. I think sometimes just having that relational collateral, that relational empathy with each other, trusting each other, means that you can do the business a lot quicker, and you're not second guessing each other. So I think that relational aspect of teams is so important, to actually know that you're not just this person who's like this meme at work. It's that kind of, you're a much more rounded person. and knowing that your teammates have got your back. Yeah, no, so I can see that that would be really, really good. What do you think? Some of the things that might just get in the way of a team performing to their potential.
Me. I think I could get in the way of that.
Yeah.
And I think through working under other leaders, I've seen that in the past. Not to belittle what they did, because there's some fantastic leaders I've worked with. But I think the leader of the leaders could potentially get in the way.
Yeah.
And I think we mentioned it already. Trust. You only move at the speed of trust. I think I've heard a number of times. I don't know who said that. I'm sure you do, Mark. I'm sure it's probably in your book somewhere. But
it might be.
it's that sort of, if there isn't trust,
yeah,
then it's not going to move very fast.
Sure.
So it's trying to find those moments and ways in which we can build trust and know each other and share that vision together. Again, I guess moving on from that, where a team will only move if it's forward, if there's a shared vision, if there's a you might bring different voices into it, which we did recently as a team with you, Mark, 5 voices, and that's been really helpful. But if we're not bringing those voices in, then that can also stop us moving and having momentum. So I think trust, me as a leader, can get in the way.
Yeah.
And ignoring the voices within the team.
Yeah.
I think those are some. There's probably loads more, but those are top 3, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, obviously we're sort of doing a bit of a high level thing today, but yes, I mean, you're right. I mean, there are many things that can get in the way. In terms of, kind of maybe just focusing in on one of those, just thinking about communication for a minute. How important would you say is good communication in building an effective team? And perhaps maybe you can think of some things that you think, that went so badly, it taught me so much. Or, what are some of the things you found that really work well in that kind of area?
Yeah, I think I hinted at this earlier. I think one of the things I'm learning as a leader in terms of how I communicate is when and who do I communicate to.
Right. Yeah.
So is this a trustee level? Is this a leadership team sort of level? Is this a whole church level? Is this at what place do I share that? And actually, I sent out a good illustration. I sent out an email this morning, getting very excited about something, and then I had an email straight back from one of the people saying, "We should have done this before we had this discussion." In the process of things, which they had every right to say that. And it was like a reminder, like, Ben, the first thing you should have done is got the core team together to discuss this before blurting out and including loads of other people. So yeah, I think there's other bigger times I've got that very, very wrong and built up anxiety within those that I'm leading. Again, especially as an extrovert processor, you're sort of like, here's my vision. And actually in my head, I'm going, we might do this. We probably won't, but I'm just sharing it anyway, because I'm trying to work out whether it is the right thing. And then you get people in the team coming back going, Ben said we're going to change all of this. I don't know how I'm going to fit this into my time. How am I going to get the time to do this? How am I going to change this? And actually, and then they come to me and they said, I'm really worried about this. I said, oh, it was only an idea. So again, one of the things that came out in the course that we did, Mark, was just saying the obvious, like, this is an idea, guys. This is what I'm thinking currently. This is not actually it's not necessarily going to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm just fleshing it out. Can you help me flesh this out?
Yeah.
And people go, oh, okay, this is not happening. So yeah, so knowing when to share and who to share that with. And also recognizing that communication, as we've seen in the pandemic, if the closer you are to the core of the team, I guess there's more communication in there. So for me, and we only employ one person in our church at the moment, the rest are all volunteers, so the whole leadership team, mainly volunteers. You own the vision, you live the vision, you breathe the vision as a leader, and so it's all consuming a lot of the time. Then you've got those that you employ who know a bit more about the vision and are enthusiastic, but probably less enthusiastic than you. And then you've got the leadership team of volunteers who you meet up with less often. And then the further you go from the core, the less people tend to know. And so it's I'm still learning of what do we need to communicate. People don't need to know everything about what we're doing, because some people like to know everything you're doing, but you don't need to let them know everything.
No.
But it's knowing, recognizing that and going, so how can we communicate this? How can we take everyone from the core right to the edges of our organization? How do we move together? And recognizing you're not going to take everyone, and that's fine. But how do we do that? So when to communicate, who to communicate to, and recognizing the fact that you communicate across a huge spectrum of people, and having some good systems in place that help you do that.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think just to kind of add to that, I would say, in these days where we're, obviously more virtual, sometimes hybrid, you can't over communicate, I don't think, in the sense that, you're connected, you don't have, as you say, what you share and that kind of thing is a really important question to ask and who with. And some things you can't share because they're confidential, but, if people can know who does need to know when, that's a brilliant thing. But actually connecting with people regularly, and not just for business, but just for other things as well, just to sort of see how people are doing, as you've said already. It's so important because people can feel disconnected very quickly, particularly with the kind of technology that we use, and that kind of thing. I don't think. Yeah. I think somebody said this. Many people have said this, but I kind of realised that I'm quite addicted to human beings during the pandemic. So, yeah, great. So as we are coming out of restrictions a bit, it's certainly here in England anyway. What have been the main leadership challenges that you've faced with the team through the last months, you would say?
Oh wow, really good question. Leadership challenges. I think for me personally, I like you said, I mean, going online has been brilliant for us in many ways. We've connected with lots of different people. We've been able to meet as a leadership team. We've got a few people on the leadership team who are married and they've got kids, so all of them can attend because you don't have to find childcare and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the biggest challenges is having that sort of a deeper level of connection, which you can have online. I'm not belittling online because sometimes that has been the only way of being able to meet. But one of the biggest challenges is just being able to really meet and really get to know each other, and how, as a church, because obviously as a church you're leading more than just the leadership team, you're leading the whole congregation. And so one of my biggest challenges is how have I connected, and I've probably failed a number of times on connecting with not just those in leadership but those that serve our church in all kinds of different ways.
Sure.
So that's been a real challenge to me. And also at the beginning of lockdown, mine and Helen's role was reversed. So she's part-time looking after the kids, but then she's a doctor, went back to hospital, took on more days. I went basically part-time and looked after the kids. So there's a frustration of, as a leader, not being able to do my job or feeling like I wasn't doing my job.
Yeah, sure.
But also just appreciating in that season, there are seasons in leadership that there's some fallow seasons where it's just really hard work to lead. But there are also times when it's just full of joy. So yeah, I think it's that deep. For me, it's been, how do we connect in a deeper way, which I think you can do when you're physically with someone. There's something different between like we are right now, to sitting down with a pint,
absolutely,
and being in a room and not feeling like you've got to fill the void of silence, all the time. Whereas when you're sitting down with someone, there's those moments that are just really important, and I think are of greater value than sometimes the virtual stuff as well. So yeah, I think that's been really one of the challenges. How do I connect with people in a deeper way? That's not just virtual, which has been great but challenging.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good observations, and certainly things we've learned about ourselves that perhaps we didn't know before as well, as we go through those things. There's been a lot of commentary around, how has the pandemic affected our mental well-being. I just wondered, in terms of your own, leadership journey, what are some of the things that you have learned to do as a leader that are about your well-being? How you can, often say happy leader, is a better leader. But what are some of the things that you've done that kind of you might be able to share with people that have worked for you?
Yeah, so again as a Christian, one of the things that I come back to a lot is prayer. Some people watching this might not believe in prayer, but
Sure.
I do, and I connect. It's a way of connecting beyond myself and connecting to God. And one of the things that we did early on was set up a Wednesday evening prayer, very simple, 15 minutes. And there's been about 12 to 15 people join us, which is unheard of in the Church of England. You normally have a prayer meeting and there's like 2 or 3 of you.
Right.
And just that, just remind, I think prayer for me, for those that are watching this are going, oh, I don't get this stuff. But for me, it connects me with something beyond myself. And it's not all about me.
Right.
It's not all about my leadership and my successes and my failures, even though all those things are good things to have in your tool belt and life and journey. But there's something bigger out there that we can connect with. So for me, prayer has been something as a leader, to pray for the people that I work with, to before I go into a meeting, to pray about them before I go into a meeting, and that really helps me, especially when I go into a difficult conversation.
Yeah, sure.
To recognize that they are a human being, and you don't fully often know what's going on in people's lives.
Yeah.
The other thing is holiday, which I failed on miserably, Mark, in the first bit of the lockdown, because we were like going, Helen and I saying, we can't go out. We have to holiday in our own home with no one. So we sort of saved our holiday. And so that was really tough from March when the lockdown happened all the way through to October. We didn't have any holiday.
Yeah.
And that was a huge killer. That was just.
Okay.
I remember talking to you a few times, and you sort of encouraged me to have a holiday. It's like, well, I don't feel like I can, and I could have done. The thing is, we can. We say we can't. We say we've got lots of things going on, but things can wait. And I think I've learned during this time that it's okay not to be busy.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say, no, I can't meet you that week or that weekend. I can't do that because we're going on holiday. And so it took me a while to learn that. And actually, we've done a lot more holidaying since then.
Great.
And we've just been away. We went away for 3 weeks, which we've
Brilliant.
never done before. So Helen said her rota worked out quite well. And I said, right, let's just do it. So we're now trying to get into a habit of, before we put anything else in the diary, is to put in our holidays. When's our day off? Which I do quite well, actually. I do have a day off every single week. But when are we putting on our holidays? When are we going to go away? And I think we've both agreed that we need to take a minimum of 2 weeks off in a row at some point in the year.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is marriage. My marriage with Helen is the most important. My relationship with God is the most important thing as a Christian. The second thing is my relationship with Helen, and with the kids. And job is second, third. and we managed 2 nights away together, first time for like 5 years since we had Beth.
Brilliant.
And we said, right, we need to do this annually. So days off each week. When are your holidays before you put anything in? Making sure you take all the holidays you can get, maybe add on a week if you can, if you've got the ability to do that, and time with my wife. So we're booking another 2 nights away next year, away from the kids. So and I think, like you said, Mark, if that sustains me, that gives me energy, then I'm a better leader, and my team will like me more.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's not really. We sometimes need a kick in the head to actually understand these things, don't we? But yeah, definitely, we need to do the things that we know will energize us, refresh us, so that we can be the best we can be, particularly with what we've just experienced. That's really good. So just as we draw this to a close, just wonder, what piece of advice would you actually give to other leaders? One thing that you found critical in getting the best out of those that you lead.
Oh, again, it's like you're throwing out gold dust of question. It's like, how do I answer this one? I guess just be yourself as a leader. I look at other leaders and think, oh, if only I was like them. If I was only like that. But actually, no, I'm Ben, and trust that people are following you because they want to follow you. and have the confidence to lead, to make decisions, and because if you're a healthy leader, you're taking time off, you're resting, you're connecting with something beyond yourself. You don't have to take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
It's okay not to be busy all the time, and to really be a leader that's encouraging and equipping and loving others to step into leadership.
Yeah.
I think if you can do that, which I'm trying to do, I fail a lot of the time, but if you're trying to do that and attempting to do that, I think you and hearing all the voices in your team and working together as a team, I think you will see a lot more wins in your business and organizations.
Yeah.
But the biggest win out of all of that is a team that are fulfilled, are happy, are willing to step, go over the next hurdle with you because they trust you, and there's that sense of love and support, and we're doing this together, and there's a shared vision. So if you can do those things, then let me know how it's done. But I think if you can do those things from day one, and just be yourself, I think you'll see some incredible things come out of it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's really good, Ben. Thank you very much for sharing those kind of, and I know I gave you some tough questions there. I think it's really important to understand that actually our self-awareness of who we are, our identity is so important, that we need to be ourselves, and we need to understand what ourselves looks like to other people who are on the outside of us and receiving the other side of us, as it were. You're really good. Yeah. So thanks, Ben. Really good to have this time with you. We'll continue to talk about leadership in other podcasts, and keep your eyes out for announcements about when the book is published. But thank you for being with us. Thank you, Ben.
And buy the book.
Thank you very much.